to another episode of Midnight Mist. In last week's episode, we talked about the 3 most haunted places in the world, including Isla de las Muñecas, Ayokigahara, and oh my god, what was it called again? Oh yes, the Self-Harm Forest.
Yeah.
And in this week's episode, we're having a special guest. Her name is Miss O'Keefe. Thank you for joining us today. So in this episode, we'll be talking about The Last of Us, which is a very famous video game about infected. So it's like a post-apocalyptic. So warning, if you haven't watched any of the games and you're planning to play them, please log off because spoilers ahead. So some background information on The Last of Us. So it takes place in Texas in 2003. So there's Tommy, there's Joel, and then there's Sarah. So everything's normal. They live a very happy life until one night. So Sarah wakes up and Joel is gone, right? You know that. Mm-hmm. And she's walking around and she hears fire. She hears like explosions and she hears random weird noises. So in the game, she walks up to the glass and then Joel all of a sudden rushes into the house and he's like, don't go there, don't do that. There's all these weird people and they're acting very strangely. So they meet up with Tommy. So when they leave the house, like Tommy's outside with his car and they start driving off. And they're looking and there's this chaos and mayhem. How would you feel about that if you woke up one day, you're a young girl, and you see all this stuff? How would you react?
As a young girl, I would definitely be super frightened.
Yeah.
As an adult now, though, I was obsessed with the zombie apocalypse as a kid. I was in high school when The Walking Dead came out.
Yeah.
So I was a very big fan of the Zombie Survival Guide book.
Thank you. That was very... Listen, with me, I wasn't really into that. I didn't start getting into The Last of Us until a couple years ago, when the game, the game came out in 2013, but when the remastered version came out, I personally liked the one better because the graphics are much better. But to get more into the backstory, they drive off and they see people running, they see explosions, and they actually drive past their neighbor's house in the scene, and it's on fire.
Yeah.
And as they get into the city, it gets even worse. Like, people are being attacked. You see soldiers, cars are just crashed. So they're driving, and then they get stuck in a traffic jam. So they're like, okay, let's go through the grass, right? And they should never have done that. But they drive through the grass. What was it? Yes, they drive into the grass, and then they make it to the main street. So they're driving, and they're looking around, and Joel is trying to console Sarah because she doesn't know what's going on. She's a young girl. She's only 12 in the game, I believe. Yes. And while they're driving, all of a sudden, Sarah notices a plane coming down towards them. And when that happens, it crashes, and then they all knock out. And then when they wake up again, they're all injured, right? They can't hear anything because, when an explosion happens, and what does it become disoriented? And they wake up, and Tommy gets out of the car first, and then Joel's like, Sarah, are you okay? Of course, taking care of his daughter. And when she gets out of the car, she has an injury to her leg. So Joel's like carries her, right? And Tommy, something happens where there's like a blockade. And Tommy basically says, I'll meet up with you later. So I don't like being split up, especially because I feel like it's better to stick in groups, but they were kind of forced to. So that happens and he's running, right? And in the game you get to control. So did you play the game, right?
I didn't. I just watched somebody play it next to me.
Yes, but basically in the gameplay, he's carrying her, and they eventually make it to like this open field, right? And he's carrying her because obviously she's disabled and she can't walk. So eventually they run into a guard, and this is where something very sad happens. So basically he says, 2 on the perimeter, and then his boss, you can't really hear, but you can infer what happened. He basically says, kill them both. And the guard kind of hesitates because he's like, there's a kid here. But of course they don't care because they don't know what's going on in the world. And Joel's like, please don't. We're not infected. And the guard basically shoots at them. And when Joel realizes what happened, he's like, Sarah, are you okay? Are you okay? And then he notices that she got shot. So when you watched this part of the game, how did you feel? at that
Oh.
moment when you saw the gunshot wound?
I cried like a baby. 'Cause
Yes.
I knew she wasn't gonna survive that, and I can only imagine how a parent would feel watching their child die in front of them. And the following scene was just the most heartbreaking thing.
Yes, so like she said, it was very heartbreaking, especially if you watch it in game. Even in the show, they made it even sadder.
Yeah.
Even sadder. How would you feel, Taz, if you were Joel and watching your daughter die in front of you like that? Like the
It would be
circumstances?
painful.
Very painful.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I'd personally be able to handle that at all, but it really makes you feel like you're there. Like the graphics, even though it came out in 2013, the graphics weren't as good. It felt like you were captivated by that.
Absolutely. It was even like a movie just watching the video game.
Yes, the movie was even better. Especially like the adaptation of it, they added new scenes that weren't in the game. So it's like, because when you make a movie, you have to make new storylines to make it more interesting, But I'm sorry, the game will always be better, but the show definitely, oh my god, that wind is crazy. But I feel like the show, they have to try to keep things the same so people don't get upset, but obviously they
Yeah.
want to kind of steer away from it.
Yeah.
But when he realizes what happened, he's like, it's okay, baby girl, I got you. And he's like, Tommy, help me. And Tommy knows, unfortunately, she can't be saved because she was losing blood too fast and she ends up dying in his arms. Then in the game, not the game, the TV show, you fast forward to 20 years later in 2023, present time, and they're living in the QZ in Boston. We have Joel, and then they introduce a new character, Tess, who we'll get into later. And they're basically partners. Later on, you find out that they're a couple, but they're basically partners, and there's like scheduled, there's like currency, there's like a curfew. And they decide that they want to, escape. They want to escape because someone stole from them, and they want to try to get it back. So they sneak out, and yeah. You want to add anything to that?
No.
You don't want to add anything? So how about staying in the QZ in Boston? How do you feel about that? How did you feel about the QZ? Did you like it? Did you not like it?
Parts of me think that it's nice to have structure and
Yeah.
routine, but sometimes it gets too strict, and in an
Yeah.
apocalypse setting, like, if one thing goes
Yeah.
wrong, then you're destroying a whole group of people.
Yeah.
So personally for me, I would stick in a very small group and try to do your own thing, but then there also is safety in numbers, so it's very two sides of the coin.
Mm-hmm. And as I said, basically Tess gets beat up, and of course Joe, being protective as he is, he's like, what happened? Who did this to you? And she explains that it was someone in the QZ. So they, as I said, they sneak out, and when they find out who it really is, so they introduce a new character. Her name is Marlene. So she's basically like the leader of this group called the Fireflies. So there's two groups, Fedra and Fireflies. So basically the Fireflies are like a resistance group. So in the Boston QZ, they basically have been bombing them, attacking them to like show a message. And when they find out, she's like, I have a job for you. If you do that, I will give you your stuff back. So they were like, you just have to take her to this hospital because this is like a special mission. Like Marlene usually doesn't ask them for favors, but this one was a special one. And then this is where we get into the new character, Ellie Williams. So she's basically like this cargo. So obviously Joel, since his daughter died, he became very tough. So at first they didn't like each other. No, they didn't. But Tess did. Tess, she was like, we should do this. We should do this and we can get our stuff back. And then after that, wherever she goes, we leave. We never speak about her again. So they go on this very long journey, which has many, many obstacles. So how did you feel when you first met Ellie in the game? How did you perceive her?
I definitely could tell that she had been through a lot and was
Yeah.
traumatized, and I saw a lot of similarities between her and Joel. You didn't know her backstory yet, but you
No.
could tell that she's seen some stuff and she's been through some stuff, and possibly similar to what Joel's going through, because at the end of the day, they're going through this apocalypse and trying to survive every day.
And like she said, in the game they don't get really into Ellie's backstory about her parents, but in episode 9, the actor who played Ellie in the game, they made a backstory for her. So in the TV show, she's running away from this infected, and she goes into the house, but she's going into labor, and she doesn't know what to do. So she runs up the stairs, and she puts a, what was it? It was a chair on the door to try to keep it from coming in, and she's going into labor. Like right there, nothing was stopping it from happening.
So
she was
badass.
giving birth. Yes, really. And then the infected makes his way in. So when it goes to attack her, she takes out. Well, first she struggles, right? And you're scared because you're like, oh my god, if she gets bit, that's it. So she takes out a knife, right? And she takes it and puts it into its neck multiple times. But then she looked down at her leg, and she got bit by the infected. So how would you feel in that moment, like trying to protect your baby while you're giving labor and this affected is just coming to attack you?
Oh my god, it must have been such an insane adrenaline rush because, you know, the adrenaline of giving birth as it is, plus having this thing trying to kill you and attack you, and it's basically just a matter of, like, the maternal instinct, like, I need to protect this little baby, and I can't even imagine, like, doing that alone and having to cut the cord myself while also killing something.
Yes, I don't know what I would have done. Like, the adrenaline probably would have been too much for me. I've never been in, like, an actual fight where I had to defend myself, so I don't know what do I do if I had to protect myself and my baby. So, when this happens, she realizes that's it. So the baby's born, and she cuts the umbilical cord, and she basically swaddles Ellie. She names her Ellie. She's like, there's a phrase that she says. I can't really say it, but she's like, you effing tell them, Ellie. So because she starts crying. Of course, all babies cry when they're born, and she's like, you tell them. And obviously, we'll get into how her character development is throughout the story. But in the show, it fast forwards to late at night, and Marlene once again was it 2 others? I believe it was 2 others.
I think so.
And they're going up the stairs, and she hears her name. What's her name again? Anna, right? Her mom's name. They gave her like a name, Anna, and she's singing her lullaby. And she walks into the room, and she's like, "This is Ellie, and I want you to take her and shoot me." What would you do if you were Marlene in that situation?
And you have to shoot someone?
Yeah, and you have to shoot your best friend that you've known your whole life. So basically, they were childhood friends. They've known each other their whole life. What would you do?
I would shoot him. I would.
Well, you would have to,
Yeah.
because you don't want to suffer and have to wait there until you eventually turn. Because with infected, it's not like The Walking Dead when they're dead. You're still you, but it's just taking over your brain. So I forgot to explain. So this all started because of a fungus called cordyceps, which is a real fungus, by the way. And basically, it's very common in ants. So basically, it takes over their brain. So it's like, what is it? So we have the host, and then we have the, what's the word again? Parasite, yes, parasite. And it takes over your brain. So they know, obviously you want to go out, you don't want you don't want to be alive thinking about how your child's being taken away from you and you're going to die and not be able to watch he or she grow up. So Marlene's like, no, I can't do this. And she starts crying because, of course, killing someone you love. But she walks out the room, hands the baby to one of the guards. She walks back in, and she shoots her in the head.
But she faked it out. It seemed like she wasn't going to shoot her.
Yeah, I thought she was going to leave her there.
Yeah.
It's like,
I'm glad she didn't.
I really just couldn't imagine the severity of that. Like, seeing a gun point at your head, and then that's it. I couldn't imagine killing my best friend, any of my best friends, because with best friends, you care for them deeply. You care for them deeply. So when their life is in your hands, that decision would be tough. But in the end, it was the right thing to do to shoot her. All right. So do you have anything else to add on that scene?
I think we covered it all.
Yeah.
Well, I want to start like asking you more questions though. So what's like your favorite scene out of the whole game?
Oh man.
I know there's a lot of good scenes. I know.
Yeah.
It's alright. We'll give you time to think here.
Yeah, I know Joel running around the hospital was pretty crazy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, that's why a lot of people started hating Marlene there because But the thing is, you have to feel bad for Marlene too.
Oh,
She
geez.
took care of Ellie her whole life. So
Definitely.
you have to have some morality. You can't just say screw her. She wanted to kill her. It's just that it was either the world or one girl. But with Joel, he didn't want to go through losing a loved one again.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't hesitate. So he basically went through the whole hospital and killed anything that was in his way. You could see it in his eyes too. Like in the TV show, they show like he you can't really see anything else. Just as him. All he sees is red, and he makes his way and he's shooting all of the fireflies, and eventually, he makes it to the room where she's at. And this is when it gets really interesting. So they go into the room, and he's like, unstrap her. Because they have like all these wires in here because they're about to prep her for surgery. So it's basically, the thing was he found out cordyceps grows in the brain. So she would have to die for the cure to be made. So he's like, unstrap her. And one of the surgeons grabs a scalpel and says, I'm not letting you take her. Then he takes his gun and shoots the surgeon.
No hesitation.
No hesitation. And then the other two, I think he killed them, right? Well, the thing is, in the game, you can take over, so it depends if you want to kill them or not.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so he takes her, then it cuts back to the actual scene. So it switches from you playing to the scene. He unstraps her, he carries her, he looks at her, she's unconscious because they have her under, and they leave. So obviously you said you would kill no hesitation,
Yeah.
right? Would you have killed all the surgeons there?
Yeah.
Because that's true. I feel like, would you have done it? Killed all the surgeons in there?
Absolutely.
Mm.
If I can't bear to lose somebody that he fell in love with her in like
Instantaneously.
a father-daughter way.
Yes.
I feel like it definitely took a while to build up because they both had walls built and they didn't want to form another bond that was going to be ripped apart. But
Yes, but definitely, you have to do what you have to do sometimes. Like people debate that. There's been a debate since the show came out. Was Joe right for what he did, saving Ellie over the world? Because if they would have made this cure, there's a possibility that people could have been cured, but he couldn't bear to go through that pain again.
There's also a possibility that he would lose a loved one, but they wouldn't be cured.
that's been my argument this whole time.
I agree with
Anytime-
Joel. Yes,
I'm
like
Team Joel.
Team Joel all the way. Like, I'm sorry for all the people that could have had a cure, but Joel was right for what he did. Any parent would do that for their kid. They would sacrifice anything, do anything for them. And I'm on Joel's side. I'm sorry for anyone who does not agree with that. Totally defend it. I'm a Joel apologist. Joel apologist forever. But then it cuts to a scene where they're in a car, right? And she's still in the gown. And she wakes up and she's startled because she was like, I was talking to the fireflies. They were telling me that they had a cure for me, but what she didn't know is that it would cost her life. So she's like, what happened? And Joe lies to her. He's like, there's other people like you, but they couldn't find the cure. And then she says, then she asks Marlene, okay, well, obviously we know what happens to Marlene. So when he goes down into the elevator with her in his arms, she's like, I'm not gonna let you do this. You're saving this little girl instead of saving the world. And she's like, please, I know even after all you've done, you can still change your mind and do this for the world. But he's like, no, you just come after her again. No. He's like, she's like, I'm not letting you leave. And he's like, please let me leave with her. And then she's like, no, please stay. And he's like, you're just gonna come after her again. Then he shoots her. Right? At first he shoots her, and then they have another little conversation. And he takes like the final shot that kills her, and then that's when they're in the car. So after that, she ends up falling asleep again.
Wow.
Yeah, they're finally. So his brother Tommy, basically, where was it again? It was in Boston. It was Oh my God, I'm forgetting it. What was the name of the town again that they made, that little town? I forgot what it was called. Oh my God, what was it called? Damn.
Yeah, me too.
It's like they had like the QZ Boston, but this one was I don't remember, but roughly about 200 miles away, his brother Tommy made a new life. Because before that, they didn't see each other for like, I think, a decade.
Yeah.
And basically, they're making their way back to him because they have nowhere else to go. So when they're on the way there, the car breaks down, so they have to hike. And then Ellie stops him. She's like, Joel, did you tell me the truth about what happened? Is everything you told me the truth? And he says no. But deep down, she knows that he's lying, but since he's the only person she cares about, she just says okay because she knows she wouldn't be able to take the real answer.
Yeah.
So in that situation, you still would have stayed strong and lied to her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have done anything differently.
I don't think so, because you could tell that Ellie was ready to risk her whole life for the world at large.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I don't know, giving her that kind of betrayal would probably hurt the relationship and make it a lot harder to stick together.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And then that's where the first game ends.
Yeah.
That's where the first game. The second game, we'll kind of, cut it short.
Yeah, go brief.
Yes, well, because it's really long. Both
Yeah,
both
I
games are
haven't-
like 30 hours. Like if you add up each hour and how much each game is, combined it's like 32 hours. You would have to like take no breaks just to finish both games in less
Yeah.
than a week. So then the second game starts and it's like 4 years later. No, I think it's 3 because she's 17. And I believe it starts off with her in a cabin. She's drawing, and Joel walks in, and he's talking to her. And I forgot to explain, in the game, while they're walking to the hospital, he's like, I haven't played guitar in a while, but would you like me to teach you? And she's like, yeah, but she's still, so something very traumatic happened to her. She almost got killed by a pedophile. He was a cannibal. I totally forgot all that, but that's a major part of the
Yeah, wow.
story. Yes,
That
how
was
did you
a
feel about
heavy
that?
scene.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you could just feel her pain when Joel tapped her on the shoulder that first time, and the way that she flinched and reacted to that. It was...
Yeah, but yes, let me just briefly explain what happened. So, while they were making their way to the hospital, Joe got into a fight with some, I think they were raiders, and when he went to punch the guy, he actually got. No, sorry, that's the TV show version. In the game, he falls and it's like a pointy part of like rubble goes into his stomach, and he's obviously injured, but he's trying to pull strong for Ellie. And they get on a horse and they're riding, and he's very weak, and then all of a sudden he falls off the horse, and she's like Joe, please no, I can't do this without you. So she ends up having to drag him all the way to somewhere where they can find refuge to keep safe. So they find like this abandoned neighborhood, and she basically stays with him to protect him. But then when Ellie went to go hunting out in the forest, she runs into these 2 guys. One is named David. I don't remember the other guy's name, but he basically was like a protege of him. And she ends up making a fire with him. Let me just skip forward. Then they go back. Then she goes back with him to get some medicine for Joel. And basically, it's very off because it seems like that guy is like the leader of all of them. It's like a cult. It seems like they're all under his control, and basically, David is really he's actually a bad guy. He's a cult leader. He's a cannibal. So basically, what the people don't know is that they're eating their dead loved ones. How did you feel about David? Because I hated him.
Oh my god, he was the scum of the earth. Literally the worst person ever.
Like, horrible. So he locks her in a cage, and he's being really touchy with her. He's like, we could take over together. And she finds out who he really is, and he goes to go touch her hand, and she's like, and she breaks it, and basically she says a very snarky remark, and what happens is she escapes the cage and she's fighting him, and all of a sudden the place she's fighting in sets on fire, and eventually David is able to take advantage and pin her down, and he's about to kill her, but then she takes the cleaver that he was using to try to find her, right? And then she gets him in the neck. But then she takes it 20 times. She takes it further. She goes like that and she keeps hitting him. Because she's traumatized. She's like yelling. She's scared for her life. But then Joel steps in and stops her. And she's like, I'm here, baby girl. Which he hasn't said in 20 years since Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, would you be able to console your daughter if she like killed someone like that? Like, going through such a traumatizing event?
If it was for a good reason, yeah.
But yes, what would you do if you were Ellie? You would have done the same thing?
Absolutely. I would have done it 30 times.
30. Yeah, he deserved that. But basically she was traumatized. She was never the same. That's when her innocence was lost.
Yeah.
And basically they make it back. And should we go to the end of this, like the second game?
Yeah.
Because yes. So at the end of the game, remember that surgeon we talked about that he killed? That basically sealed his fate. So they introduced a new character named Abby, and that was actually her father. And she's been trying to find Joel to get revenge on him. And basically Joel finds Abby about to die, so she takes him in, and she introduces them to all her friends. And once he says his name, they all look at each other. He says, I'm Joel. And they basically hit both of them. And Ellie's trying to find him. She makes the way to like their headquarters, and she walks in and they tackle her. And she's begging Abby not to kill Joel. But Abby doesn't listen, and she takes the golf club and she smashes his head in while she's watching. And that, we're not going to get into it, but that goes into her revenge era where she finally finds Abby and lets her go. How did you feel about that scene? We will stop it right after here. How did you feel about her letting her go after all of that?
I couldn't believe she let her go.
It's just the thing is she knew it's not what Joel would have wanted, personally. But a lot of people still debate about that. But I feel like it was her decision, and like I said, I'm a Joel and Ellie apologist. I will go with Ellie all the way, even though I didn't, fully agree with her. I still stand with her. But you want to make any lasting remarks, like any opinions, anything else about what we've talked about today?
I will say, like, an overarching opinion on the show, as somebody who loved The Walking Dead, I feel like I would have loved to see some of these like bad guys that popped up throughout the series.
Yeah.
I would have liked to see those storylines drawn out a little more, maybe over like a few episodes, because I feel like every episode they find a bad person.
Yeah.
And by the end of the episode, that bad guy is done. Like, everything is resolved.
Yeah. But the way the second game ended was very sad.
Yeah.
But if you guys wanna watch it, you can get the game. It's only available for PlayStation. But if you have nothing else to say, thank you so much for joining us on talking about The Last of Us.
Thank you for having me.
And in next week's episode, what are we talking about again?
We're actually connecting back to our first episode, and we're talking about 3 supernatural creatures.
Yes.
We will keep that discreet. You guys will have to tune in to see it.
Yes. But thank you guys for tuning in. We love you all, and see you in next week's video. Goodbye, everyone. Cut.